And welcome to another episode of the Bandit Room. My name is Charles. I'm joined here in the studio today by Mr. Caleb.
Hello.
Thank you. And Mr. Aggie across from me.
Hey, what's up?
How are you?
Dude, I'm okay. How you doing?
Good. We have a special guest here in the office. A couple special guests, really. We have one special guest.
When are you going to stop addressing every guest as a special guest, Charles?
I was going to say, devalues things.
I mean,
that's interesting.
Almost everyone.
I'm trying to imagine if there's one that I've said is not a special guest.
Well, Amber is not a special guest.
Yeah, I probably did call her that.
You did call her special guest.
I don't mind being the non-special guest, because that makes me special.
Okay. All right, so we have a regular guest for everybody today, and we also have a surprise visitor in the office as well, who's not going to say anything. You may hear him on background, but we do have a special intern for the Bandit Room today. So anyway, our first guest, regular guest, is Mr. Jon Routledge. Am I pronouncing it? Is it Routledge?
You are spot on.
Jon Routledge of Bestpass. How are you?
I'm doing great.
And what brings you here today to the Bandit Room?
What brings me to the Bandit Room? Well, I actually am accompanying the intern to make sure he doesn't get out of hand in the corner there. So I was due to be spending the day here with you good folks at ETT, and then amazingly I got talked into doing a podcast by Aggie, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. Well, I think it was the potential bribery of bourbon.
That's right. But in the world of Aggie, things happen.
That's how we get.
Without a moment's notice.
That's how we get most of our guests. We say, "Oh, you're interested in some bourbon? Okay, yeah, come talk to us for a little bit."
Just stand in front of that microphone for 10 minutes.
The more times we say bourbon, the more keywords, the more potential for sponsorship.
Oh, that's good. That is another thing.
Keep saying bourbon.
That is a little bit of an open secret with the whole goal of this podcast.
So talking about bourbon, I went on a little bourbon run on Saturday.
Okay, here in Rock Hill?
No, I was
where were you?
On the boundary of North and South Carolina.
Okay, no man's land.
Indian land area. I went there for breakfast, and then saw one liquor store. Walked in there, and they had some special allocation stuff behind the counter.
Oh, interesting.
And buying that, and then turn around to come back home. Then bumped into another one, so walked in there, and found some really good stuff. And my very first orphan barrel. Apparently, orphan barrel is when they are mixing the bourbon and they bottle it, and then they have one barrel left.
Okay.
And then they bottle just that from one barrel, and then they never can be made again. It's just like one orphan barrel left. So it's very rare or exclusive to get a bottle like that. So I found one of that.
Did you buy the barrel?
No, just that one bottle. That's all they were left.
No, I'm just thinking you may have done a deal to buy the barrel.
You can actually.
Furniture.
You can. A lot of distilleries do that, where you can buy, I don't know if it is one barrel, a couple of barrels you can buy, and they'll bottle it for you. So I haven't gone to that level of alcoholism yet. So
you're building up slowly.
Collection, I'm getting into my good collection.
Gotcha. For those who don't know, Aggie's a bourbon collector.
Collector, not a massive consumer.
Collector.
You buy more than you can drink.
Oh, I have way more than what I'll ever drink.
Right.
I got more than enough bottles that I'll never be able to finish.
Gotcha.
But some of them I may not even open. So gotcha. I don't know. We'll see.
So that was your big find over the weekend, was an orphan barrel?
Oh, yeah, that was my first one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this other gentleman I got introduced to through Adam.
Mm-hmm.
He's a huge bourbon collector, seller, exchanger. He's like number one contact for the Charlotte area if you want to get any bottle of bourbon, any exclusive bottle. So he sends me a text the other day, and he goes, I found this bottle one of my friend wants to sell, and it's very exclusive, very rare, and that bottle is $13,000. So I said, well, that sounds great, but I have not got my budget to that level for my collection yet.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Was that Pappy? Is that what that one was?
No, it was a Eagle Double Rare.
Eagle Double Rare.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if it's not too rude to ask, what has been your limit so far on the budget?
The most I have spent on a single bottle is $900.
Okay.
I only bought like a couple of them, like 2 or 3 bottles on resale. Almost all of the bottles that I have, I paid only retail for it. So there are bottles in allocation, lottery, and all that stuff. Like in Ohio, they have this 4 times a year. They have this lottery system. So you go and apply for it online, and these are special allocation. Like you will never be able to find it. But people who buy them for like $800, this bottle that the guy wanted $13,000. Retail on that is probably $800
Mm-hmm.
when he bought it or whatever. but $13,000 to $15,000 is the resale value on that. If you really want the bottle to put in collection or open it.
I don't know whether I could open that.
For real.
I mean, once you've broken the seal, that's it.
So let's talk a little bit about Mr. Jon here for our visitors, our guests that are listening to us here and don't know who Mr. Jon Routledge is. And now, Jon, we know you from your work at Bestpass.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what you do there. What's your role, and what kind of what brought you there?
So I head up what's called the consumer line of business, and also get involved in, which is the relevance to ETT, in our expansion beyond toll. So it's really to help the company broaden its reach, offer more services, either through partnerships, acquisitions, build-outs, whatever that is.
Right.
How I got to Bestpass? Well, most of my career has been in transportation, so you could say there's a sort of tenuous link there. But I got into the tolling industry back in 2016. I ran a company called Highway Toll Administration that was ultimately acquired in 18. The tolling business is fairly small in terms of it's a fairly tight-knit community, and I'd met John Andrews, who was formerly with Bestpass, and once I was free of non-compete obligations, he introduced me to Bestpass to come on board and see if I could help with the plans that they had, and that was in start of 2021.
Gotcha.
So I've been there since.
Awesome. Fantastic. And where did you start your career?
I started my career in a very esteemed 3-week temporary paid job in an accounting department back near Heathrow Airport back in 1986.
Okay.
And that 3-year temporary job turned into a permanent job with a company called DHL, and I was with them for 23 years.
Wow.
And travelled to various parts of the world. They actually brought me over to the US. So, like it or not, the reason that I'm here is them.
Nice.
I'm not sure they would say that was their best delivery. But
That's a good line.
Oh, that's good. We might have the title for the episode. Not their best delivery.
yeah, not their best delivery. And by the way, the interns pulling faces at that particular joke, I thought it wasn't bad. Off the cuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So what was your role at DHL? What did you do?
Primarily, once I'd realised that accounting wasn't really the most exciting thing for me, nothing against accountants, I got into sales, business development, general management, and really that's been my sort of career.
So
trying to grow things and make things, new things, and promote them and sell them and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Right on.
So over that 23 years, how did that transition? Where did you start, and versus where did you end up there? So you ended up in business development?
Yeah, I ended up running their international team, and then I ran their northeast area for a couple of years at the end in the US.
Yeah.
Having worked my way through sales and general management in the UK. DHL back then, actually they still are now, they're really one of those true global companies. If you do a good job and you want to travel around the world, they'll move you and they'll give you the exposure to lots of different cultures, which is really great. I've spent time in Asia, across parts of Europe, and obviously the US.
Wow. How much of your time now is traveling?
Not as much. I think like everyone with pre-COVID, we don't travel, or post-COVID, we don't travel as much.
Right.
And it's actually quite nice. I think my peak of travel was in 2000 and, I'm going to say 2010. I did 125 domestic flights in the US.
Oh, wow, that's pretty good.
I don't know whether it's good. It's actually painful.
I did that in my late 20s, early 30s, working at the previous company that I used to work for, and I thought it was fun. But I was single. I didn't have any bills. I didn't have any responsibilities. I was just growing the business, and literally, we used to stay in the same hotel. Well, the company put us in the same hotel in Miami, and there was like 4 of us who traveled quite a bit. We used to buy cases of beer, drinking away, whatnot. But then next day we are leaving. We're flying somewhere to go set it up something and come back a week later. So what are you going to do with the leftover beer? So we used to take the tiles off the ceiling, stick it in there, and be gone. And all 4 of us
got the same room next time.
No, there was no big deal. All 4 of us knew which room we have the liquor stacked up. sucked up. So when any one of us came back first, they just went and knocked on the room, got the chair in there, and took
Just pretend you worked at the hotel or something. Just, excuse me, we had a call from the front desk about this room.
We've done that so many times, but then the housekeeping staff, they all kind of know us, so they'll say when there's nobody in the room. We used to do that all the time. I wouldn't enjoy traveling that much now, but then I had a great time. I did that quite a bit. I literally took a flight twice a week, almost every week until like 10 months out of the year.
Yeah, that was, and actually, it was fun at the time, because you're running on adrenaline. You're literally hopping from one meeting, one airport, one hotel, and at the time, it's pretty cool. It's when you look back and you go, oh, I'm not sure I want to do that again.
Charles, have you been away anything longer than 2 days you spent with me? Where were we? We went to somewhere. Where did we go?
We went to Kansas City.
Kansas City. For what?
Yeah. We were meeting with the trucking association.
Oh, that's right. That was 2 days. One day.
Not to be named.
Not to be named. 2 days? Is it the longest you've been away from your family?
It honestly was. Yeah.
That's
honestly it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good life, I mean, I like my family. Recently got a new one.
We don't say.
Are you inferring that we
don't like our family?
I was going to say, we're going to have to edit some of this
I'm
now.
going to take a step back and let the intern host. Judging by your accent, you're not from America.
You're not from around here, are you?
You're not from around these
Charles,
parts.
do that without.
You don't recognize the Brooklyn accent?
Don't recognize the Brooklyn accent, yeah.
Charles, you should do that with a southern accent, Charles.
Well, you're not from around here, are you? I don't think he's from here. No. So our good friend John, our regular guest here, you started your life across the pond. Am I right?
I did, yes. I was born and bred outside just of West London.
Okay.
Lived near Heathrow Airport. Grew up in a tiny town called Ashford, which was the last place I lived before I moved to the US in 2002.
Still go back and visit regularly?
I was actually back there this Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
and
nice.
it's the first time I've sort of been back to London as a tourist. Probably actually the first time I've been back to London as a tourist, thinking about it. That's a bit of a weird statement.
What'd you enjoy? What did you enjoy as a tourist? What was your best
I'll tell you
London
one
experience?
thing that I didn't realise. Just
That
how-
Elizabeth is not there anymore.
Well, thankfully I'd found that out before I dropped myself in it with
Just like you just get
a
there.
local.
What do you mean she's not here?
I got an appointment. So I'll tell you what I didn't. Having lived in the UK for as long as I did, obviously, and growing up there, I did not realise just how many pubs there were. I mean, particularly in West London, it was like every street corner had a pub. So we actually went to the oldest pub in London. We went to the oldest restaurant in London.
Okay.
Went to the smallest street in London, which is literally just a tiny alleyway, but does have an address. So yeah, it was.
You just did all the superlatives.
Yeah, we didn't do things like that, like the Houses of Parliament and stuff
the
like
oldest
that.
this, the smallest that, the biggest that.
Yeah, sort of. We were checking them off.
Okay.
It was. No, it was good.
So you didn't do the sort of big classic stuff. You didn't
No,
go
not the
see
big
Houses
classic
of
stuff. I
Parliament
actually
and-
went to see I'm going to call it a football game because it is football everywhere else in the world.
Sure.
It's not soccer.
Yeah.
Sorry to all the American guests tuned in. But I went to see my beloved team, Chelsea.
Okay.
We actually won. It's the first time I've seen them win for the last 3 times I've been there, so that was quite good.
Nice. Who were they playing?
Bournemouth.
Okay.
So we should have won, and we did. So that was good.
Make sure you got your money's worth with the ticket
that was-
purchase there.
Absolutely.
Now,
Nice.
so what's your view or thoughts on the monarchy in back home for you? What is going to happen now?
Are you a fan of monarchy as a system?
Oh, this is going to offend some and please others, I suspect.
There's no right or wrong answer.
So I think that it's difficult not to admire the Queen for the length of service and for her time in that role. And I think you struggle not to recognise the devotion that she gave to the role and her country. I do think it's become more challenging to sort of see how that monarchy integrates with the modern world. And I've never been a great fan of the extended circle that ultimately sort of live this. They do live a privileged life on the back of largely the taxpayer, which I think is challenging for a lot of people, particularly in the current climate. Right? And I'm not sure how connected they are to reality. I think it's going through a period of adjustment, change, and evolution, which I think is probably due. And I think a smaller unit that is more relevant has a place to play. I don't think it's going to go away. It's too historically embroidered into the tapestry of the country.
I mean, that was a real question, though, back in certain points in history in the 70s or 80s as to if the monarchy would continue. And I think she's likely responsible for the fact that it has kept going, that there hasn't been some public demand in the UK to abolish it or establish a new form of government.
Yeah, I think that she definitely played a part in sort of diffusing some of that.
Right.
I also think that right or wrong, the British are pretty traditionalist, and they like the fact that they have a monarchy, and they like the fact that it's admired in many places around the world. I think that they also recognise it needs to modernise. And I have to say, just because it's relevant at the moment, I think the current wranglings and bickerings and memoirs and all of that stuff.
I was going to ask you about how you're following this whole Harry-Meghan situation.
Following it in that it again, I'm not a huge royalist.
You don't have much choice as to whether you're following it. You hear about it, whether you like it or not.
I was going to say, it's right in your face. There's nothing subtle about it. Yeah. I would say for a pair that claim that they want a private life, it's pathetic. I mean, I want a private life, so I'll move to California.
Right.
Surround myself with a bunch of sycophants and try and publicise everything that I can.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like privacy to me.
It's interesting, because I feel like this little series that they were doing, I haven't watched all of it. I watched an episode or two of it. And I think it's going to have the opposite effect of what they intended. I think people are going to be less sympathetic to their whole situation by the more information they find out about.
Well, I think that one of the traditions of the royal family, and we can debate the value of traditions, is that you don't do your dirty laundry in public.
Yeah.
You resolve these family things within a family. Sounds a bit like something out of The Godfather, but there's a comparison there. He's also broken so many unsaid rules. In the military, you don't declare what your activity was. You might declare that you were in the service. You don't declare the number of kills that you've had. So I think he's ill-advised. I think he's immature, and I think he's walking around with a huge chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like most people were on their side. The general public was supportive of everything, seeing them in the public light.
His mother died in very tragic circumstances, and it was lived out in the public forum. And I'm sure that as a 12-year-old, that was tough. He's not the only 12-year-old that ever lost a parent.
Right.
And he had a very privileged existence.
Right.
And I think that's where it gets a bit challenging. Wow, we're getting really serious now. You're going to have to get that bourbon on.
All right, we can go on a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Jon's other passions.
Express Tax Exempt is now tax990.com. We changed our name to make it even easier to recognize us, but everything you know and love about Express Tax Exempt is still here. Tax990.com still provides you with easy Form 990 filing, free schedules, great customer support, and much more. Learn more at tax990.com.
And we're back, as you can tell.
I think, during the break, we were talking about restaurants, family-run restaurants shutting down for the holidays or they're going on vacation. I think that's a good thing to do because when you own a business, you really never really have a time off. And especially during the holidays, you can't take any time off. But I think you should force yourself to take the time off as long as your business is established enough that you can survive the lack of business during those days. And it's not really going to affect your regular customers and others thinking that you're always gone. But I think they should take time off like that And some of the restaurants that we frequent, they close for the whole holidays or for a month or 6 weeks, and they go on vacation or go visit family, whatever. I think they should do that. I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's interesting that there was a family-run, I would call it a country-style hotel that was out in Dorset, which is where my late mother lived, and had been in the family for generations. And they would shut for the month of February for exactly that. It was recharge, do any renovations that were needed, give everyone a break. And it was their quietest month of the year, so they could sit there and go, well, financially this sort of makes sense. But every year, February, they were closed down for exactly that reason.
That's a very good idea. We can't shut for a month for the whole company. But something that I'm planning is we get to a point where we can introduce some kind of a sabbatical for long-term people.
That's interesting.
We're gone for a month or two.
Yeah.
But we should be open to at least getting 1 or 2 text message from me, though.
A sabbatical with conditions.
Maybe 2.
A sabbatical, but not if there's an emergency.
It's a semi-sabbatical.
Only for real important stuff.
Maybe 1 or 2.
That's not a bad idea.
So obviously everybody here, Caleb is a big fan of movies. He's big into classic movies.
Yeah.
Would you share that? He's such a proper gentleman. He actually picked a fight with a gentleman from Ohio about Alfred Hitchcock.
Wow.
He called him names right there live, doing it live.
And then he proceeded to cyberbully him afterwards.
This is blatant misinformation. I think you'll find if you listen to the previous episodes, that was not how it went down.
Are you a movie fan, John? Do you have any particular favorites so that Caleb can maybe destroy them?
I'm going to tread very carefully on this subject now. I do like movies. I wouldn't call myself a sort of a movie buff, but I actually mentioned one of my favourite movies earlier, which was Godfather.
Oh, yeah.
Godfather 1 and 2. Godfather 3 was
hard to pick a fight with that one.
Yeah, but Godfather 1
Do you
and 2.
care to? Would you like to?
I was going to say.
I think everyone would shoot me if I finished.
Yeah.
So Charles is a foodie. He enjoys food. Travel.
Guilty as charged.
Travel and, tasting different types of food and then talking about it. So Charles and I before he became my dad, we used to go and have
we
lunch.
used to go out and have fun.
Have lunch quite often. Now he's got to report back home for lunch. So, and then we'll order something, and then I know the food is good if Charles is eating, and Charles starts going right in the middle of eating.
I can vouch for that because when I was here last time, we went for dinner.
We talked about this.
Charles was sitting to my left, and you were sitting to my right, and you said, "I haven't heard any noises from Charles." And I'm like, I can vouch that he is approving of the food.
So speaking of hobbies, perhaps we should get to
Let's switch to hobbies.
what we got John here for,
Right.
which is talking about his hobby or one of his interests, which is Formula One, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. So what is it?
What is Formula One?
What is that?
You're
What is
talking
the- what is
to
the
a
few
very
Americans over
yes,
here.
very American audience.
Do
Not
you only
very
go
familiar.
left, or you're allowed to go right as well?
All right.
Yeah. It's so yeah. You don't.
We're familiar with
you,
NASCAR around here in the
you don't
Charlotte
just go
area.
round in circles. You do have other things that you do as well. So it's an open seater 4-wheel racing series. It's generally regarded. This is definitely going to upset some people, but it is generally regarded as being the pinnacle of motor racing.
Mm-hmm.
You are into many things which upsets a lot of people.
Well, because
This is gonna. Before he says anything, this is gonna irritate some people.
Yeah, well,
This is gonna bother some people.
Exactly. Well, look, you can be vanilla or you can spice it up a little bit. I like it.
Listen, if you believe in that, I think you should just go out and say it. F- it. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, I mean, look, to be honest, I don't really care that it may upset someone. I'm just trying to be kind to the
Okay,
audience.
you're just providing trigger warnings
Indeed.
for our audience.
If this is likely to upset you, you may want to mute at this moment for about the next 10 seconds and then come back on. But yes, it is generally regarded as the fastest and the pinnacle of motorsport. I started watching it on TV back in the day when it really wasn't broadcast live, back in the the early 80s. I attended my first race in 1983 at what was then the Silverstone track in the UK, which was basically an old Second World War airfield, and you stood on this grass bank and you basically saw a car going past you at 160 miles an hour for 100 yards.
Wow.
And you saw that
That's
like
cool.
55 times because you couldn't see anything else. And,
Right.
and then over the years, I've been fortunate to be back at Silverstone. I was there last summer with my son. We were up in a grandstand. You saw an awful lot more. I've been to the first Miami race last year. Okay. I just love the sport. It's filled with passion, emotion, fast cars. I love cars. There's always a subplot. There's politics. There's drama. It's got a bit of everything.
Yeah.
So just like the passion, the drama they have with curling.
Slightly faster, Aggie.
Or cornhole.
Again, moves slightly faster, a little bit more expensive, and fractionally more popular.
No, in all seriousness. So who's your driver or who's your team?
So I'd say current driver and team is Lewis Hamilton, who drives for the Mercedes team.
Yep.
He's a 7-time world champion, won more races than anyone else. The first driver I sort of really followed with a passion is a driver by the name of Ayrton Senna, who's a Brazilian. He died sadly in 1994 at a Formula One race. He was the first driver that I saw that just drove with raw passion and took the car on the edge and was prepared to go further than anyone. He drove for the McLaren team. They were actually a customer of mine back in the mid-90s when I was back in the UK, and I managed to tour their then factory and sit in some of their cars. Wow. Not that I was supposed to, I was allowed to by the guy that was giving me the unofficial tour. And he said to me, his name was Les, I hope Les is retired because this could be the end of him. But he said to me, don't tell anyone, but I'll look the other way and you can sit in one of the cars. I didn't actually get in the car because I'm too tall and they're extremely narrow.
Right.
But it was, I've been an addict ever since.
When I started watching that, the driver that I kind of followed, I'm really having a hard time remembering his name. A German guy, Michael Schumacher. I mean, he was very popular. I think he's still very popular in India.
Sadly, Michael Schumacher was he after he retired. It's a very sad story. He was involved in a skiing accident, which has left him with both physical and mental damage, and he's not been seen in public since. No, it's very sad. Gosh. But he was also a 7-time world champion, and before Lewis Hamilton was, by Grand Prix wins, the most successful driver.
I watched a show or documentary about the Formula One, how they play the races, they travel and all that stuff. It's amazing how expensive that sport is.
It's. I'm going to use these words carefully because they introduced a new set of rules this past season. They introduced a cost cap in trying to sort of level the playing field and frankly try and make the sport more sustainable because it got massively out of control.
Right.
And the cost cap is $145 million for a season.
Well,
but does that include the driver pay too?
No. It doesn't include the driver's pay and the top 2 directors. So it's basically running the team, and that's supposed to be a cheap version.
Yeah.
Prior
That's
to
crazy.
that, these teams were spending $400-600 million a year.
Yeah, that documentary was pretty good about like how expensive that sport is. It's crazy. Now the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Ford versus
Is that the base same thing?
No, so Ford versus Ferrari, which is a great movie and a fantastic story, is actually based around sports cars and the racing at Le Mans, which was previously dominated by Ferrari in the 50s and 60s. And then Henry Ford wanted to basically rain on the Ferrari parade and pulled this project together. And they eventually pulled it off with the Ford GT40, I think it was, which was an iconic car.
Do you follow any of those races?
I'm a bit of a petrol head, to be honest. I will watch virtually any form of motorized sport. Okay. But Formula One is the one that I would not miss.
So is there for me, I've been to an NFC championship. Charles, we went to the NFC championship game. One of the items on the bucket list is to go to a Super Bowl. I've been to Daytona 500. That was interesting. That was fun. But so I definitely want to go to Indy 500 one day. For you with Formula One, which race is something that's on your bucket list that you want to attend?
There's two. One would be the Monaco Grand Prix.
I've actually been to that.
Yeah.
But I watched it from my cruise ship. I was not there.
I actually had the chance to go one year and turned it down, which amazed. To this day, I must have had a really odd moment. But there's that and the Singapore Grand Prix because it's at night and it's a night race.
Okay, nice.
Incredible.
So other than the Indy 500, what other races happens in the U.S. that is as exciting?
Well, the Indy 500 is a big one. The Daytona 500 is another big race. The 24 Hours of Daytona. So Daytona 500 is NASCAR.
Right.
Indy 500 is IndyCar. And then the 24 Hours of Daytona is sports cars. So it's the American version of the Le Mans race.
Okay.
Which is also on my bucket list to do.
I also went to Kentucky Derby last year, so that's off the bucket list.
Oh, good for you.
That was fun.
They're a
was
little
fun.
bit slower though. They could put some engines in those horses. Make it
But
exciting.
listen, you are there 2 days, all dressed up, and basically you never see so many well-dressed people drunk.
So there's a lot of similarities. So you go to a Formula One race and it's a 3-day event,
Right.
and you see a lot of people drunk, but they're not dressed up.
See, that's the difference.
So it's 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Yeah, I was going to ask if there had ever been a big race like between a NASCAR driver and a Formula One driver, and then I realized I was just describing the plot of Talladega Nights.
There's been moments where drivers have switched series.
Yeah.
So there's a Formula One driver, Spanish guy by the name of Fernando Alonso, who a couple of years ago attempted to win the Indy 500. Unfortunately, the first year he tried it, he almost did. He came within about 40 laps. Second year, his engine broke down, if I remember correctly. Or maybe he didn't qualify. But that's like, there's 3 races which are considered like the holy grail of motorsport, which is the Indy 500, the Le Mans 24-hour race, and then the Monaco Formula One race. So if you win those 3, you're in rarefied air from a motorsport perspective.
Gotcha. That's wild.
I think we should just get a plan together to go attend one of the Formula One races here. Or do they have Formula One races in the Miami one, right? That's the only one?
This year they've got Miami, Austin, Texas, and Vegas. So you've got 3 chances this year.
When do they take place?
So Miami is in May. Vegas, I believe, is October or November. And Austin, I think, was October. I might have got those 2 the wrong way round. Towards the end of the year.
Anything else you want to talk about, John? I think we're coming to the end of our session.
Good. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It was eclectic, varied, and humorous in equal measure. So I appreciate
Very
it.
good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today as
Thank
our
you.
regular guest. Special thanks to our intern who helped put this together. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on the Bandit Room. Stick around next week and see what we talk about.
The Bandit Room is a production of Span Enterprises, located in sunny Rock Hill, South Carolina. We've been developing, supporting, and growing successful IRS e-filing and business management solutions since 2010. Go to spanenterprises.com now to learn more. The views and opinions expressed in the Bandit Room are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect or state the opinions of Span Enterprises. No information should be considered as tax, legal, or other professional advice.